pleasure to introduce to you former Boston Celtic great, won 2 championships. I think he played in, don't quote me, but 4 during that span with the Boston Celtics. Let's welcome Greg Kite. Greg, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, Larry. I don't know about that Bucks flag behind you, though. They're not doing too well.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, it was a rough night for us last night here.
It was. Wasn't pretty.
But,
1 week.
yeah, there you go. Well, first of all, thanks for joining us. I want to thank you very much for coming on Frankly Speaking Sports tonight. Let me ask you this. We were just having a conversation on our last show around basketball players and about how the game is different from, actually it was from the 80s down to today's game, about the team-oriented game. Talk about the game, Greg. No better person I can think of than talking about a team-oriented way the game was played back in the 80s compared to today with such players as Larry Bird, Robert Parrish, all these great Kevin McHale and so on.
It was an awesome era to play when I did back in the 80s and 90s, and I obviously was fortunate to play on those championship teams with some incredible Hall of Famers and other great pros. But it's still a team game today. The thing that's happened today is they changed the rules. They changed the rules on defensive contact in the early 2000s. They did that because the product was getting ugly. They were slowing it down after the Jordan era. Some teams were slowing it down. Some teams that were not. There were a lot of scores in the 80s, sometimes in the 70s and 90s, and it wasn't really good for marketing. So they changed some of the contact handshaking rules and how you could guard guys in open post. So it's kind of changed the physicality of the game. And then you've had the trend with the analytics and all the 3-point shooting and spreading the floor and running the numbers. So, sometimes it does get a little bit less of a team game than that we just see guys standing around, spot up and shoot, or James Harden drive to the basket. But even the good teams, though, like the Warriors, they were great 3-point shooters during their run, but they would cut to the basket, move, cut. So there's still elements of it there. It's just played a little bit differently, and the rules a little bit different right now.
So let me ask you this. You're the 21st pick overall back in the 80s for the Boston Celtics, and you're coming on a team, I believe they had just traded Rick Roby away, a center, and now you're coming on a team that is filled with probably the best 6-man arguably to ever play the game in Kevin McHale. You have Robert Parrish. When you were drafted in the first round by the Celtics at the center position, what was your immediate thoughts?
Well, I was excited. It's been a long-time goal of mine from youth basketball age, junior high school, to be an NBA player. So it was coming to reality with that. And then to get picked by the Celtics on top of that, I was kind of projected as probably a high second-round pick, maybe sneak into the first round. I was picked as the 21st pick in a 23-team league then. And so, the breaks kind of went my way. The Celtics had traded Rick Roby. It was one of their backup centers, or their backup center, to Phoenix for the rights to get Dennis Johnson. So it opened up the door to get Dennis Johnson. And Celtics actually had their eye on Red Auerbach, had their eye on Roy Hinson, who was a big man coming out of, I forget where Roy played in college, but he was a good pro. And Roy went to Cleveland to pick before the Celtics picked. So the Celtics picked me, and then coming in there, hey, with that team, with those veterans, and those pros like McHale was the 6-man back then, I knew there wasn't a lot of, it wasn't going to be like open door to playing time. It was a veteran team that was playing for championships, and so I just worked hard and made my place and found my role there, and it was a lot of fun playing with those guys.
Greg, how much did you learn? You're playing with some of the best players to ever play the game, arguably some of the best teams to ever play, and you're watching probably the best team basketball, front row seat to unbelievable team basketball. just by sitting there and watching, how much of an education did you get in basketball?
I got a PhD in basketball. And, you know, if you go to this level and you play in the NBA, which there's only, so many people have, you really do get a PhD in basketball because you're around it all the time at the highest level. And certainly me there, like I said, I played on the Celtics team in 86, 85, 86, 87 when I played there. We had 5 future Hall of Famers on the team, and some other guys, Danny Ainge, Jamal Carr, other guys like that who'd been All-Stars a time or two in their career. So I got to buy a ticket to go walk through the Hall of Fame in Springfield and see their displays. But you certainly learn, and then just even going against, practice against those guys in a game. I mean, anytime you move up to the next level, basketball, whether it's from high school to college, college to pros, junior college to 4-year school, players' games really take you gotta mature, you gotta grow, and then you learn from those. And what a great setting for me. I had a good foundation from my college and high school days with fundamentals and things like that. But I was just around a set of guys who are really true pros. They really, we got along great. They rode each other hard. They had a lot of fun. We ripped each other. We played jokes on each other, but we competed too. And so, I saw what these guys, a lot of them had been around the league then, besides the Hall of Famer, Larry Bird was in his MVP days. So fantastic just sitting and watching them there. But all the other guys, have been around the league 5, 10, 12 years, and they really knew how to play the game. And so learning from them was an awesome experience.
So what was it like? I mean, the Boston Garden, you walk out, you look up in the rafters, you see amazing amount of history. The first time you walked in, was it a Boston Celtic the first time you walked into the Garden as a player?
Yeah, I'd never been in the Garden until we played there. I mean, we didn't usually practice there. We practiced as a small college, and so I'm sure probably I'm thinking back, my first exhibition game there was the first time I'd been in the Garden. I'd never been there as a fan or as a player at college level or anything like that. So it was one of those unique historic buildings with a lot of history, but it was also old, so it had its famed lore of the creaky floor and hot locker rooms.
So let me ask you, for the fans that didn't get to watch, maybe they were too young in the 80s, talk about the experience. First of all, let's talk about the experience of playing with Larry Bird and describe to them what Larry Bird was to the Boston Celtics.
Well, Larry Bird was the key to the Boston Celtics. He was he and Magic Johnson and for a number of years were probably the top players in the league. Obviously a lot of other great players around, but Larry, was in the early 80s to the mid 80s to, about 87 when he started getting some injuries and wearing down. He was just at the peak of his game, and everybody looks at Bird as a great scorer and shooter. He was, but he was just good he was also just as great of a passer. That might have been the best thing he did, actually, was passing the ball, and he was probably the best. He was one of the best defensive rebounders in the league too. But and even more than that, Larry's mind and his he wasn't afraid out there. He wasn't afraid to fail, and his confidence out there was next to none. And so the great players put all those things together: the work ethic, the skills, that mental strength, that mental capacity, and Larry had that. But he was a beauty to watch, man. When he got rolling, if you haven't seen it, you're a youngster, go back and click on some YouTube highlights of Larry Bird.
Well, and I had the pleasure of watching all you guys play because I lived in Boston in the 80s. So I've had that pleasure. So I know what it was all about growing up. But talk about that run. You had 4 straight NBA finals. You won 2 championships. Talk about the experience. It's one thing to play in the NBA. What is it like to go through the playoffs and play and win an NBA championship?
Oh yeah, I mean, playing in the NBA Finals for 4 years in a row, I didn't realize that we were only the second franchise in history, and I think it had been a Celtic run before in the '60s that had done that until the Miami Heat did it. 25 years later, 30 years later, with LeBron, Wade, and Bosh. That so 4 years in a row, and then they had this 30 for 30 series, which is a great one about Celtics and Lakers. People should go watch that if they didn't see it before. But in the '80s, either the Lakers or the Celtics were in every NBA final, either together playing each other, which happened I think 3 or 4 times, and then or one of them individually was playing. So it was an awesome era. That it was kind of that springboard off the great NCAA final with Magic and Larry at Michigan State, Indiana State, and they took a league that had some, just a couple years before was tape delaying NBA final games and had a lot of issues, drugs off the court, and things like that, and really took the NBA to new heights with marketing, exposure, and fan interest. And then when you had those 2 top storied franchises, every great story, every great movie got a hero and a villain, and that's what we love about sports. It's exciting when you got your hometown favorite or whatever, but these traditional rivals in sports, the Yankees and the Red Sox, the Celtics and the Lakers, the Chiefs and the Raiders, whoever it is in a sport, that's what really brings it out. And that was so awesome. It was just incredible fans, incredible attention, people all across the country, all across the world. It was all focused on that, and being in those 4 NBA finals was just really the peak of the game in the 1980s.
Now, talk about the time when, you had to make the decision, you leave Boston, and, here you're at a place where you're a backup player, you're getting some time, you're averaging about 8 minutes a game, you're contributing to the team, you're winning championships, and now you got a choice where, do you want to be a backup, or do you want to get an opportunity and have more of a role and even possibly start somewhere? How tough was that decision for you as far as to go play somewhere else?
Yeah, it was a difficult decision, but sometimes as a pro athlete, pro basketball player, you don't always have total control over the decision. So when I left Boston, I really didn't have total control over it. It was going to happen one way or another. I was still under contract. It was during my 5th year there, about halfway through the season. Celtics were struggling with some injuries. Kevin McHale had a screw put in his foot the year before. Larry started to have some injury problems, and Bill Walton was still hurt. And anyway, they brought in Artis Gilmore as a backup, and so they put me on the injured list. And you could always put some on the injured list. Everybody's always banged up. My back was sore. 30 years later, my back is still sore about every day. But that's just the wear and tear of the game. But at one point there, after a few weeks, I think the Clippers were trying to trade for me, but why give up anything? Somebody else needed to center, and some other team in the league challenged the Celtics my legitimacy on the injured list. So I was going to have to be examined by a doctor in the league to see if I was really legitimately injured. I may have passed it anyway or not, but anyway, so what ended up happening was they waived me, and the Clippers played me on waivers, so they picked up my contract. So it just kind of forced their hand, kind of forced my hand a little bit. Downside was I left Boston. I was no longer in Boston. It would have been great to stay there my whole career and play a little bit more, but the upside was the downside. I went to a terrible team, bottom of the league, but I did get to play. I did get to play a lot, and when you're with a championship contender and you're a young player, every game is so important to those championship teams like the Celtics or any team making the finals. And so there wasn't a lot of room for mistakes for young players to go out there. But for a team like the Clippers, I got to do that, in the next year and a half. And then I went on from there to play briefly with the Charlotte Hornets, and for a year, the Sacramento Kings, and eventually with the Orlando Magic. And those are really good opportunities in the middle of my career because it solidified my position as a good solid backup center. Even though I started a lot of games for those bad teams, but that's really how you create your value in the league. So it was kind of a double-edged sword. It probably helped my career. Go on and play somewhere else and play a little longer. On the other hand, leaving the Celtics was kind of a sad day.
Well, believe me, we all remember you, so don't worry about that, Greg. Let me ask you this: after basketball, let's talk a little bit about after basketball. And are you still the commissioner of the basketball league, the Florida Basketball Association?
Yeah, I've been involved with the Florida Basketball Association for about 10 years. A gentleman named Mark King, who I know, formed it, and it's one of the longest running minor leagues in the U.S. I mean, outside of like the G League. So a lot of minor leagues, there's just not a lot of revenue. And so we've always kept it kind of Florida-based, kind of a short niche season. Kind of screwed up this year with the pandemic.
Right.
Spring and summer, they play about 10 or 15, about 15 games. And a few guys that play low levels, overseas and post-college guys. So my role in it's not a big role. I've just been the commissioner, and involved in a few league meetings, go to a few games and things like that. And those guys put their heart and soul into it, but they have fun doing it. We've had a couple of guys that actually played we're going to tryouts with the G League, but it's usually just some guys in their 20s, sometimes up to about 30, who want to just keep playing basketball after their college days, and a few of them have gone and played overseas, Puerto Rico, Mexico, small countries in Europe, things like that. And so I enjoyed doing that, but I'm also stay involved with youth basketball. I had a stint with college coaching back for a few years after I retired, but I helped as an assistant coach at Pathways School, a private school here in Orlando. We had a varsity game today, so I'm involved with that. So.
Great. Now you're also, if I understand this correctly, and I'll let you explain it more. Is it a financial advisor? Is that what you're doing now? Advising families on financials?
Yes, I'm a financial advisor and investment advisor, and I'm a fiduciary. I give people financial advice. We help set up financial plans, and I recently joined a longtime friend who used to work with in the industry, Sean Pauley. So I'm with Pauley Wealth Management. You can find us at pauleywealth.com, Polley. And when it comes to money, it's kind of like oxygen. We deal with it every day, whether we want to or not.
Right.
And what I've enjoyed, I got into the industry about 15 years ago, post career, is I enjoyed teaching people a little bit, helping people understand a little bit more about how money works. Just because money's not everything, but without a good plan, a good management, it can be pretty stressful. And stress, money stress is not a good thing. It can be not good for your health and tough on relationships and marriage. So helping people make a good financial plan. Just like we probably all know how to do a sit-up or a push-up or pump some iron or go jogging or walking, but it's always great to have a coach, or a workout partner or somebody, a trainer or a coach. So, on the financial end of things, that's what we're able to do. We're able to work with people to help them, plan for those big goals in the future, like retirement, putting their kids through college, etc.
Why don't they do this? I mean, you're a person, you're a former athlete, and these are things that you would think like later in high school as kids are getting older, instead of worrying about something like geometry or algebra that they're never going to use in their daily life. Wouldn't this be good to start doing it in maybe the high school level or definitely the college level? Could you look back as a former athlete and saying, and maybe you were smart enough to do this before and had guidance, but there's a lot of even athletes that, they go from college, they go to the pros, especially in certain sports like basketball and football, where you don't have like minor leagues in baseball, where they could really use this education on how money works. Wouldn't this be something good for them to utilize at that age?
Oh, absolutely. From beginning up, and it was just a few years ago, there were only 4 states in the country that required like a mandatory personal financial course for high school students. Now it's improved. I think there's like 15, 20 of them, but even then it's still very basic. And you think about it, most families, a lot of times you don't talk about it, and you don't really learn much. Yeah, we're dealing with it all the time. So teaching young people, and hey, I got a bachelor's degree science-based in college at Brigham Young University. I never had a personal financial course. In college, I just got interested in it during my career, and then post-career, I got involved. And so it's really a big need when you think about it, and we kind of get, it's kind of all a car. We get all this stuff through, through our work placement, we get a retirement plan. We don't have a retirement plan because we're self-employed or in a small business. We borrow money over here. We save money over here at the bank. We go, get the car loan over here. We don't know how it fits all together. So helping, people how it fits all together. And then certainly, athletes, young athletes, it's been out of the leagues, the pro leagues have done some proactive things to kind of help, give seminars and guidance to guys. And so hopefully they're doing better. But you always hear about these sad stories because it is so backwards, I mean, I was fortunate to play 12 years professional ball, and with the average NBA player probably plays 3 or 4 years, and NFL, that kind of thing. And if you're lucky, you play 10, 15, 18 years. But you're earning more money in your 20s or maybe your 30s when you got less life experience. Most of the time, people, in their careers and jobs, we're earning more money in our 50s and 60s and 40s when we're hopefully a little smarter, a little more mature. So there's some good chances, opportunities for gals to blow it who earn a lot of money early, but also too you get to where you establish this this lifestyle for most people 6 figures. I guess some of these athletes today 7 figures even. And so how do you make that? What happens when the game ends? You got 50 years to live. How do you stretch that out?
Right. And Greg, this is the time, and we have a lot of listeners here that are, let's just say, from 20 up, 30s, 40s, 50s. A lot of people get this image that I can wait. And isn't it the longer you wait, the more you're really losing, because the time where you really need it, I would assume, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is while you're young, while you're starting a family, while you have a lot of these things going on, because later in life, your family's going to grow older, and, I don't want to say they can fend for themselves, but, people think, well, I can wait till I'm 50 to do that. But isn't it right? Like when you're right out of college to start thinking about a financial plan?
Absolutely. In college, and even as a teenager, if you can, procrastination is one of the biggest enemies of wealth. And, it's kind of like the little tortoise and the hare, the tortoise wins the race because he's slow and steady. And so that's what, if young people, even in their 20s, even though they're in school or just getting their career started, and that's when their excuse is, I'm just getting a career started, trying to find a job. They rack up a lot of college debt, which, is awful these days. But, even somebody saving $100 a month, or $50 a month when they started, and as your income goes up, increase that, and then learn about smart ways to save that money and invest that money, and you'll be way ahead. There's a number, I don't remember the exact number, but there's people, they just save for if somebody just would say 22 and save for 8 or 9 years till they were 30 and stopped, say they were saving $300 a month, and that person, and then somebody else waited till they were 31 to start saving at age, and they were earning the same rate of return. And at age like 65, the person who started at 22 and stopped would have more money.
Right.
That's where procrastination, interest, everybody knows about interest, but compound interest is a really powerful principle. So that's where your money's working for you,
Right.
A lot of these great people in history, they figured that out, J.P. Morgan and Bill Gates, hey, I can make this money work for me while I'm sleeping.
Right.
And so many people, there are a lot of opportunities these days to create something, do content. There's all this gig economy. Some people hit it big with an idea, and that's great. Maybe many of us will come across some kind of windfall in our life, but that slow and steady wins the game. And you think about this, just with COVID, what has hit so many people? Boom, my work's been cut back, or I'm out of work, and there was some relief from the government for a while, but then boom, you're out of your savings, you're not able to pay your rent, so you gotta save money for a rainy day for those emergencies, and save money for long term goals and try to minimize the debt that you have, at least especially the consumer debt, the high interest rate debt.
Now, Greg, for those people that are listening, if they want to get in touch with, let's say, because we're coming from Florida too here, our program, and they want to get in touch with the company you're working for, with you yourself, how can they learn more about this?
Yeah, they can just go onto our website to polywealth.com, POLLEY wealth.com, and they can actually request an appointment or just want contact for more information. They'll be able to reach out to me or Sean or get to me. That's probably the best way to contact me. I'm pretty easy to find on the web too. If you want to message me personally through Facebook or Instagram or something like that, I don't use that much, but Facebook Messenger, etc. You can do that as well. I'm pretty open. But polywealth.com is our website, and that's it. We've got a lot of contact our numbers there online.
All righty, my friend. Well, listen, Greg, I want to thank you so very, very much for joining us tonight on Frankly Speaking Sports. I really, really enjoyed catching up with you.
Well, I did too. Thank you, Larry. I enjoyed it too, and look forward to maybe meeting in person sometime. So you're down here in Tampa, correct? You're in the
Yeah, I'm right in Tampa area.
Okay. Well, if you're over in Orlando, give me a ring.
All right, love to do that. All right, you be safe, my friend.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good evening. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
That was Greg Kite, former Boston Celtic, joining us here on Frankly Speaking Sports.